In the same way, evil is a departure from the way things ought to be. But to say things ought to be a certain way, again, presupposes prior mind. And as a note, inevitably evolution is brought up as an alternative basis for the origin of the incumbency of moral norms. Now this fails on the grounds that you can't get an ought from an is. As I said in my previous videos, morality is at best descriptive if it was derived evolutionarily. It describes what we've done in the past, but it cannot account for the prescriptiveness of morality or moral incumbency. Another example is as follows. First, the person attacking theism will say something like the Holocaust was evil and asks why such a loving God would allow such depravity. Later, when the tables turn and their own behavior is in question, they argue that morality is merely a matter of opinion. This undercuts the validity of the problem of evil because it nullifies the moral veracity of their argument. It reduces the earlier objection of how could God allow so much evil in the world to how could a good God allow things that are contrary to my opinion? Or to put it more bluntly, I can't believe in the existence of a God who would disagree with me. See, evil can't be real if morals are relative. But evil is real, though. That's why people object to it. Far from disproving God, the problem of evil actually serves as evidence for God. It shows the authenticity of real objective moral values. Evil serves as a reminder of what departure from the moral law entails, and very powerfully at that. It is my claim that this moral law can best be accounted for by a moral lawgiver. Now, as a side note, I want to admit that a moral law does not necessarily entail a lawgiver per se. It could be that the moral law exists as a brute fact and that they're platonic forms and they just don't come from anywhere. That's possible. I do want to suggest, however, that the existence of morality is better explained by the existence of God rather than objective morality just being there. Now there is a key aspect to morality that cannot be accounted for by any other theory of the origin of morality. This aspect that I'm going to speak of in a minute is devastating to the idea that morality evolved along the evolutionary timeline, or that the idea of morality is an outgrowth of the brain, and also the idea that morality is based in empathy, or even the notion that it has survival value. What I'm referring to is the incumbency of morality, or the sense of oughtness that comes with moral decisions. There is an imperative that can best be explained by a moral lawgiver. I want you to notice that moral truths, such as it is wrong to torture babies for fun or it is wrong to murder, have imperative force behind them. To put it differently, moral principles do not present themselves as simple truths about morality. Moral principles come to us in the form of do not murder. They have the force of command behind them, and we feel the weight of it constantly. They have a texture of a binding moral command. And I want to suggest that the imperative force that is part of moral truth is best explained if there is a commander than if they're just abstract principles that are real. If that were the case, there really would be no imperative to obey them outside of social obligation. If there is no mind behind the moral order, then there really is no sufficient imperative to follow it outside of social retribution. If they're simply moral statutes written by nobody, then why should I obey them? I mean, that's like obeying my Scrabble board if the letters happen to spell "go to Vegas" by accident. The second thing I want to discuss about the moral law is that it produces guilt and shame in us when we violate it. Now, I want to suggest that the guilt and shame that we feel when we violate true morality is more than just guilt and shame in the face of society. Now, I can't prove that to you. I say to consult your feelings when you engage in moral failures and see if what I'm saying rings true. That being said, it's a little hard to feel guilt and shame in the face of an abstract moral principle that doesn't have a person behind it. I mean, if all there is some abstract moral order, or in other words, some set of moral principles without a person behind them, it makes it difficult to reconcile the existence of and level of moral shame and guilt we feel. See, moral norms are a form of communication, an activity in which one mind through statements conveys meanings to another mind. Chance morality fails to be a communication between two minds and therefore cannot be imperative. The best explanation of the prescriptiveness of moral notions, along with the feelings of guilt and shame, can best be explained by a lawgiver. We feel a deep shame when we violate the moral law because we have offended the lawmaker. This would ring true apart from social entailments of such actions as well. It is from this that the best conclusion one can draw from a moral law with these properties is, in my mind, a moral lawgiver.